She cheated on me with my best friend, then stole $250, $0 from our joint account during the divorce. Now she's claiming she deserves half of everything because she's entitled to my family's inheritance too. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating on him, especially not with my best friend. It's like something out of a bad movie, but it happened to me, and honestly, I still can't believe how quickly everything fell apart. The moment I found out, it was like my world just shattered into a million pieces. And what made it worse? The level of betrayal, the lies, the greed, it all hit me like a freight train. I met when I was in my late 20s. She was gorgeous, confident, a real firecracker, the kind of woman who could turn heads just walking into a room. We got married after a couple of years of dating, and for a while, things seemed perfect. We bought a nice house, had a good life, and I thought I'd finally found someone I could trust with everything. But as the years went on, I started noticing small things. Phone always buzzing. She'd hide it when I came into the room. She'd be late for dinner or suddenly have to work late when I knew she was just out with friends. Little things, but enough to make me suspicious. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I told myself I was overthinking. Then about 6 months ago, I stumbled across a text message while she was in the shower. It was from someone named Chris, and the message was flirty, suggestive. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I kept reading, and it was clear she'd been seeing him behind my back, probably for months. The worst part, she lied when I confronted her, said it was just some work friend, that I was being paranoid, that I didn't trust her. I wanted to believe her, but the evidence was right there. And then I started noticing more signs. She was always quick to deny, but her behavior changed. She was more distant, secretive. She'd leave her phone in her purse, lock the bedroom door when she was on calls, and suddenly she didn't want to have sex anymore. It was like she was avoiding me, and I felt more and more like I was losing her. The real blow came when I found out about the affair with Chris. I was going through our joint bank statements, trying to get a handle on our finances, and I saw a strange transfer, $50, $0 wired to an account I didn't recognize. I dug deeper, and that's when I found out she'd been siphoning money for months. Turns out she'd been secretly withdrawing from our joint account, using the money to fund her secret life with Chris. I couldn't believe it. Not only was she cheating, but she was stealing from us. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about her complete disregard for everything we built together. I felt sick, angry, betrayed. I wanted to confront her right then, but I knew I needed a plan. I had to be smart about this if I wanted any chance of getting some justice, so I started gathering evidence. I saved all the bank statements, took screenshots of the texts, and kept record of her suspicious behavior. I wanted to be ready for when I finally called her out. But even then, I had no idea how deep her lies went or how much worse things would get once I started digging into her stories. What I didn't expect was her reaction when I finally confronted her face to face. That's when the real chaos began. I remember the moment so clearly. I'd been sitting on the evidence for weeks, trying to figure out the right way to approach her, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked her to sit down, told her I knew everything, the affair, the stolen money, the lies. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer like she thought she could just brush it off. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're overreacting, Jason. It's none of your business. I was just having some fun. You're so paranoid, it's pathetic." Pathetic. That word hit me like a slap. She was calling me paranoid while she was out screwing my best friend Chris behind my back. It was so infuriating I could feel my blood boiling. I told her, "I found the wire transfer. You stole $250, $0 from our joint account. How do you even justify that? And then you lie about everything else." She rolled her eyes and scoffed. "It's my money too. You're just jealous because Chris is better in bed than you ever were. And honestly, I deserve to have some fun. You were never really paying attention to me anyway. I was bored." That was the moment I realized she was a master manipulator. She spun her lies so effortlessly, making it sound like I was the problem. She claimed she deserved half of everything because she was entitled to my family's inheritance too. Said she needed a fresh start, that I was holding her back, that she was a victim. I couldn't believe how cold she was, how she just kept spinning her stories like she was the innocent one. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt sick, betrayed, crushed. I'd trusted her for years, and now it felt like I didn't even know who she was. I was angry at her, but also deeply hurt. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. I was furious at Chris for breaking up my marriage, but mostly I was furious at for lying so effortlessly, for thinking she could just take what she wanted and walk away scot-free. I told her she had to leave. I couldn't stand to look at her anymore, not knowing what she'd done behind my back. She packed her bags quickly, throwing a fit about how unfair everything was, how she deserved her share of the inheritance, and how I was just a jealous fool. She accused me of being insecure, of not trusting her, as if I was the crazy one for trying to protect what was ours. Once she was gone, I sat alone in the house I'd built with her, feeling numb. The house was too quiet, the silence louder than anything. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneers, the stolen money, the betrayal. The worst part, I knew this was just the beginning. She wanted to take everything, our savings, the inheritance, even the house. She believed she was entitled to half of it all just because she decided she was. I felt helpless, but I also knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this. She thought she was smarter than everyone, that she could cheat and steal and walk away with half my life's work. But I wasn't going to let her, not without a fight. I started planning my next move, knowing that the real battle was just beginning. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was determined to come out on top, even if it meant playing dirty myself. I had no idea how far she'd go or how much she'd try to claim. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her take everything I worked for without a fight. After she left, I spent the next few days trying to piece everything together. I knew I had to protect what was mine, the house, the money, the inheritance, but I also knew was already scheming. She's the kind of person who'd try to spin her lies even from a distance. I couldn't just sit back and hope she'd do the right thing, because she hadn't shown any signs of doing that so far. So I started digging even deeper. I hired a private investigator just to confirm what I already suspected, that she was probably hiding more than I knew. Turns out she'd been funneling money into accounts under fake names, probably trying to hide her assets. I also found out she'd been talking to a divorce lawyer behind my back, trying to set herself up to get as much as possible, claiming she deserves it all because she was entitled. Meanwhile, kept spinning her lies. She called me a jealous, insecure fool, told everyone I was the one cheating, how I'd been suspicious and paranoid, and how I'd driven her away. She even tried to turn our friends against me, saying I was controlling and unreasonable. But I had the evidence, and I wasn't about to let her get away with her bullshit. The divorce proceedings started rolling, and that's when she really went on the attack. She filed for half of everything, including the inheritance, claiming she had rights because she was married to me. She insisted she deserved her share, even though she'd stolen money and cheated. She argued she was entitled to a big chunk of the house, the savings, and even some of my family's estate because she sacrificed so much and deserved to be taken care of. I knew I couldn't just roll over. I had to fight her claim, not just for the money but for my dignity. I started consulting lawyers, gathering all the proof I had: bank statements, texts, her own admissions. I wanted to make sure she couldn't just walk away with a free ride. I also made it clear I was prepared to expose everything: her affair with Chris, her secret accounts, her lies. I knew she was banking on her charm and her bitchy attitude to sway the court, but I was ready to fight dirty if I had to. The biggest shock came when she demanded an equal share of the inheritance. I was stunned. Not only had she stolen from us, but now she was claiming she was entitled because she was my wife and deserved everything I had. She even said she was entitled to a share of my family's estate, claiming she'd been married to me long enough and that she'd suffered enough. That's when I realized she was a master manipulator, playing the victim while she schemed to take everything she could. I remember sitting there, seething, thinking about how she'd lied so much she believed her own bullshit, how she convinced everyone she was the wronged party, even as she was the one who'd betrayed me first. I felt the rage build up inside, not just at her, but at myself for ever trusting her. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about making sure she didn't get away with ruining everything I'd worked for. So I doubled down. I hired a good lawyer, one who knew how to handle these kinds of manipulative, entitled women. I made sure every piece of evidence was ready, every argument lined up. I wanted her to know I wasn't going to fold. I was prepared to fight her for everything she was trying to steal. I knew the court wouldn't just hand her half without a fight, especially with everything I had on her. The worst part. I kept thinking about how she lied so effortlessly, how she looked me in the eye and told me she loved me while she was screwing Chris, how she thought she deserved everything just because she was entitled. It made me sick, but it also fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my life, my money, my future. I was going to fight for what was mine, no matter what it took. The court dates came faster than I expected, and I was ready. I had everything lined up: the evidence of her affair, the stolen money, her secret accounts, even her own words when she tried to justify her actions. I knew would do everything in her power to spin things her way, but I wasn't going to let her manipulate the system. I wanted justice, and I was prepared to fight for it. She showed up to the hearings with her usual bitchy attitude, throwing tantrums when things didn't go her way. She insisted she was entitled to half the assets because she'd sacrificed so much, and that she deserved her share of the inheritance because she was married to me. She played the victim, claiming I was controlling and abusive, trying to paint herself as the wronged wife. But I had the evidence, and I made sure the judge saw it all. During the hearings, she claimed she needed the money to start her own business, to live her best life, and that she deserved a big chunk of everything because she was entitled. She even tried to argue that she was entitled to a third of the inheritance because she'd supported me through thick and thin, ignoring the fact that she'd been secretly siphoning money and cheating behind my back. My lawyer hammered her with proof of her lies and theft. I saw her squirm when I presented the bank statements showing the transfers, the texts from Chris, and her own admissions. I could see her trying to come up with excuses. I was just bored. He was better in bed. I deserved happiness. But it all fell apart under the weight of the evidence. The judge didn't buy her sob stories. When it came to the inheritance, his face turned red. She argued that she deserved her share because she was my wife, and that she'd suffered enough for the sake of my family's legacy. She claimed she was entitled to half of everything, including the estate, but I stood my ground. I told the court she had betrayed me, stolen from us, and tried to manipulate her way into our assets. I pointed out her lies, her affair, her theft, and her blatant entitlement. I made it clear that her actions disqualified her from claiming half of anything. The judge listened carefully, and after hours of back and forth, the verdict was clear. She wasn't getting half of everything. Her theft and betrayal disqualified her from claiming a fair share. Instead, she was awarded nothing close to what she demanded. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, but I knew it was far from over. What surprised me most was how calm I was during the proceedings. I'd been so angry and hurt at first, but as I presented my case, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I'd done everything I could to protect myself and what was mine, but I also realized that this wasn't just about money. It was about my dignity, my trust, and my future. Stormed out of the courtroom, furious and screaming that she'd fight me in court forever and that she'd take everything I had. But I wasn't worried. I'd made my case and I'd won the legal battle. Still, I knew her vindictiveness wouldn't stop there. I had to stay alert. She was the kind of person who'd go to any lengths to get what she wanted, even if it meant more lies or manipulations. In the end, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I'd fought for what was right, and anger that I'd ever trusted her at all. But I also knew I'd come out stronger. I'd taken control of my life again, and I'd made sure she couldn't just walk away with everything. The fight wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The aftermath of the court case was a whirlwind, but I finally felt like I could breathe again. Reaction was predictable. She was furious, screaming at everyone, claiming she was cheated, and that the system was rigged against women like her. She made a big show of how unfair everything was, how she'd lost everything, even though she'd stolen and lied her way through the entire ordeal. Honestly, I didn't care much about her tantrums anymore. I was just relieved that the judge saw through her bullshit and awarded her. Nothing close to what she demanded, but her vindictiveness didn't stop with the court ruling. No, she immediately started trying to twist things around, making false accusations about me to our friends and family. She told anyone who would listen that I was abusive, that I'd cut her off financially, and that I'd ruined her life. It was classic playing the victim, trying to turn everyone against me. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate my loved ones with her lies. I also had to deal with her ongoing attempts to claim her entitlement to the inheritance. She kept insisting she deserved a cut because she'd supported me, even though she'd been secretly stealing from us the whole time. I made sure to get a court order that clearly heard any claim to my family's estate, citing her betrayal and theft as reasons. It was a small victory, but it felt good to finally put an end to her delusions of entitlement. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding my life. I moved out of the house, got a new place, and focused on my work and my mental health. I couldn't let her ruin me completely, even if she thought she could. I had to stay strong for myself. The money she stole set me back financially, but I was determined to recover. I'd always been smart with my finances, and I knew I could rebuild what I'd lost, step by step. What struck me most during this process was how much I'd underestimated her. I'd always thought was ambitious and confident, but I realized she was also manipulative and entitled. She truly believed she was owed everything because she was married to me, even if that meant lying, cheating, and stealing. It made me question how many other people out there might be just as entitled, just as willing to betray for their own gain. Looking back, I see this experience as a brutal but necessary lesson. Trust is fragile, and sometimes, the people you care about the most can turn out to be the biggest betrayals. I've learned to be more cautious, to pay attention to the signs, and to stand up for myself. I still get angry thinking about how I was, but I also know I'm stronger now. I've faced the worst, and I've come out on the other side. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this. Don't ignore the warning signs, and don't let anyone, no matter how convincing or charming, make you feel like you're overreacting. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and fight back. Because at the end of the day, no one is entitled to your life, your money, or your happiness. You have to stand your ground, even if it means going through hell first. That's what I learned. And honestly, I feel like I'm finally starting to rebuild my life, wiser, tougher, and more aware of what real betrayal looks like. Now, I spend most of my days reflecting on everything that happened. It's not easy, and some nights I still wake up with the rage and betrayal flooding back. But I've come to accept that I can't change what she did or undo the damage. What I can do is move forward, smarter and more cautious than before. I've learned that people like those who are manipulative and entitled will do anything to get what they want, even if it means destroying others in the process. Trust is a fragile thing, and once broken, it's nearly impossible to repair. That's why I now guard my heart and my trust much more carefully. I don't let anyone get too close unless they've proven they're worthy. The biggest lesson for me has been about self-worth. I realized that I don't need someone who manipulates, cheats, and steals to feel complete. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, things never truly gave me. Moving on was the hardest choice, but it was also the best thing I ever did. I started focusing on myself, rebuilding my confidence, and rediscovering what makes me happy outside of her shadow. The financial fallout was tough, but I managed to recover. I cut my losses, secured my assets, and made sure she couldn't take more than she already tried. It's a process, and I know there will always be scars from this betrayal, but I refuse to let them define me. Instead, I see them as lessons, hard lessons, but lessons nonetheless. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the red flags sooner, but I also realize that sometimes people hide who they really are until it's too late. Trust your instincts, And don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. If someone shows you they're not worth your trust, walk away. Because in the end, the ones who truly care will respect you enough not to betray you. So here I am, finally at peace with what happened. I've learned to forgive myself for trusting too easily, and I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity. Got what she wanted, a taste of my life, my money, my happiness, but she lost the most important thing, my trust. And honestly, that's the biggest victory I could have hoped for. I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar finds strength. Trust is a gift, and it's not meant to be handed out lightly. When someone proves they're unworthy, walk away. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity are worth more than any material thing or fleeting relationship. I've learned that the hard way, but I'm glad I did. Life's too short to waste on betrayals and lies. Now, I focus on rebuilding, healing, and making sure I never get like this again.